Scary Mysteries Twisted Twos, Mary Ann Holder and North Fox Island. Tales of hauntings, murder, and scary mysteries. Every week, Twisted Twos dives into a pair of uniquely terrifying true stories that are worthy of a more in-depth look. For this week, we focus on a seemingly ordinary mom from North Carolina with a strange story and a terrifying retreat known as North Fox Island. Get ready for Scary Mysteries Twisted Twos. Number 1. Mary Ann Holder. Known to be fun-loving, law-abiding, and a conscientious mom, 36-year-old Mary Ann Holder seemed like an ordinary woman. Born out of wedlock, she moved around with her parents in and around North Carolina. And growing up, she became best friends with twin girls, Beth and Leigh Hunt. As the girls' friendship blossomed, Mary Ann ended up dating their brother, Robert Smith Jr., who's 2 years older than the twins. At 15 years old, she found herself pregnant with their first child. Despite being teens, the two ended up marrying and lived at Robert's home on Cocoa Drive in Greensboro, North Carolina. Aside from their firstborn, Christina, they had two more children, Robert, who was born in 1994, and Zachary in 2006. But the marriage eventually broke down and Robert and Mary Ann divorced while still remaining friends. Mary Ann and Beth also remained friends. When Beth had a premature birth due to physical abuse by her husband, Mary Ann stepped in to take care for her baby. She also took in her 8-year-old child, Hannah Lee. Beth's older child, Ricky, was already living at Mary Ann's place and had been since July of 2008. Another child, Michaela Woods, also moved into Mary Ann Holder's home at 923 Cocoa Drive in Pleasant Gardens. The 15-year-old was Mary Ann's niece through her half-brother, James Holder. But aside from her complicated home life and multiple children living with her, Mary Ann's personal life was also filled to the brim. After her divorce, she dated several men, the most prominent of which was Randy Lamb, whom was married at the time. On November 20th, 2011, Mary Ann spent the majority of her morning buying groceries. In the afternoon, she went swimming with the kids and her boyfriend at Grimsley High School. According to her boyfriend at the time, David Stokes, she looked a little tired, but not as distraught as the night before. Apparently, Mary Ann was slapped with a $250,000 alienation of affection lawsuit by Jennifer Lamb, who was Randy Lamb's wife. The two parted ways around 11:30 p.m. that evening, but then sometime in the middle of the night, something unexpected happened. Mary Ann got up, grabbed a gun, and suddenly began killing every single one of the kids in her home. She first shot her 17-year-old son Dylan, then 15-year-old Michaela, 8-year-old Hannah Lee, and 17-year-old Richard. In the morning after the killings, she met with Randy Lamb and shot him in the shoulder. It was Lamb who called his wife Jennifer, and she in turn called 911. But Mary Ann took off before paramedics and police arrived. She then picked up her son, 14-year-old Zachary, who had slept over at a friend's house the night of the murders. She then killed him while inside her car, before eventually turning the gun on herself. During the investigation, police revealed Mary Ann had left 2 suicide notes prior to her death. In one of them, she apologized for what she did, but said she had felt wronged. Despite this note, no one knows what her exact motives were for killing the children as well. Her family, her remaining daughter, and her ex-husband are as baffled with her actions as her boyfriend and close friends. They feel either she was pushed to the edge and lost her grip on reality, or they simply didn't know who this woman was in the first place. Number 2. North Fox Island. As Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile ring recently unraveled before the eyes of society, people were horrified to discover that a billionaire and philanthropist was in fact a vicious predator. But what most don't know is Epstein wasn't the first of his kind. On North Fox Island in Michigan, a runway cut across the northern portion of the tiny island. It was the first thing millionaire and philanthropist Francis D. Sheldon had built, after he outbid the state government to buy the island retreat from a widow. Stretching over 3,000 square feet, the property was filled with large beech and elm trees. In this area of sprawling greens, the reclusive millionaire built what he dubbed as a boys' summer camp called Brother Paul's Nature Camp. But behind this innocent front lay a web of deceit, years of sexual abuse, and hundreds of victims in its wake. Sheldon descended from lumber baron Russell Alger, who once served as the Michigan governor before becoming the Secretary of War under President McKinley. He was also responsible for lighting up the city of Detroit using Edison's electric light company. With such a prestigious lineage, no one doubted Frank Sheldon's charitable works. He was described by those who knew him as a nature lover. An amateur ecologist who loved shipwrecks, he preferred seclusion and reveled in the silence of nature. But he also preferred to keep his other actions away from prying eyes. Brother Paul's Nature Camp was officially launched in 1975. It was a charitable program that brought young, underprivileged boys to the island in the summertime. The premise was to give these boys the experience of camping out in nature. It also promised to give kids tutoring, counseling, boarding retreats, temporary lodging, and emergency care for runaways. Sheldon wasn't alone in setting up, running, and putting together Brother Paul's Nature Camp either. Among his friends was the chief organizer for the camp, Gerald Richards, a gym teacher for St. Joseph's Catholic Elementary School in Michigan. He was also an amateur magician, and police records show Richards had a history of child abuse. Once the two met up, they hatched a plan to start the nature camp. They were then helped by Reverend Dyer Grossman from New Jersey. Grossman was a science teacher who taught at two boys' schools. He became vice president of Sheldon's nature camp, with Richards at the helm. Richards' wife was the secretary. The treasurer's name was redacted from the official file, and to this day, no one knows why. During the summer of 1976, the child abuse centering on the nature camp and its patrons blew up. Charges were brought against Richards, Sheldon, and Grossman for raping two boys in Port Huron and on Fox Island. But like Epstein, Sheldon had wealthy connections and an even higher client list linked to the abuses that happened on the island. Richards was arrested on July 23, 1976, but the search warrants took months to release. Then County Prosecutor Peter Deegan at one point stated he wanted to wait on issuing a warrant for Sheldon until the investigation was complete. By September 27th, inquiries for a warrant for Grossman were forwarded, and the prosecutor simply said it wasn't available because of a heavy workload. Another attempt for a warrant was asked for in October of 1976, but by this time Sheldon had fled the country and cleaned out all incriminating evidence. The same thing happened with most of his accomplices. Richards, for his part, took the bullet for the team. He pled guilty and gave testimony against his colleagues, earning him only 2 to 10 years in prison for the crimes he committed. He never really served close to 10 years and was back on the streets shortly after. During the investigation, it was revealed North Fox Island wasn't just an island for abusing young boys, but it was a hub for producing pedophile porn. The boys were not just sexually assaulted, they were photographed and videotaped, and these were sent out to a sponsor list as well as to other pedophile networks around the country. Those, of course, who could afford to visit the island were welcomed in to abuse the boys themselves. Brother Paul's Nature Camp was found to have ties with a group called Church of Revelation, who had 5,000 clients on their list. Boys Farm Incorporated, situated in Tennessee, was another. It was founded and operated by an Episcopalian priest, one Reverend Claudius Vermily Jr., and featured over 270 sponsors. This included Frank Sheldon. Another group, Troop 137, a Boy Scout group from New Orleans, used young boys for porn and sex. Another millionaire, Richard Jacobs from Boston, was also part of these crimes and was indicted on 15 counts. Police continued on, and other pedophile sites were uncovered, But investigators found the network was much larger than they had ever imagined. They had seized films and correspondence coming from every single state in the U.S., as well as Canada and Australia. During a nationwide manhunt, police discovered Sheldon was living in the Netherlands. Even though he was charged, he was never extradited, and it said he died at the age of 68 in July of 1996. No one knows what happened to Grossman, but it's believed Richards and another conspirator, Adam Starchild, or at least that's what his moniker was, are also believed to be dead. Amidst all this hoopla was also the strange series of abductions and murder of 4 children in Oakland County, Michigan between 1976 and 77. During this time, 2 young boys, Mark Stebbins, who was 12, and 11-year-old Timothy King, and 2 young girls, 10-year-old Christine Malich and Jill Robinson, who was 12, were abducted and later found killed. The 2 boys were sexually assaulted with a foreign object. It said the victims were bathed and fed during their captivity before they were eventually killed. Many believe the 2 cases are linked to each other, but so far no absolute proof has been found tying them together. Today, the case of Frank Sheldon and his notorious pedophile network hardly registers in today's media circus or even on the internet. A select few, including written blog posts and some books, help to showcase the story, but other than that, it seems to be a case still kept under wraps for the most part. So there were 2 of the most frightening and heinous stories around. The world can be a crazy place, and Twisted Twos is sure to show you why. We have new videos every Wednesday and Saturday, so if you enjoyed this one, then please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.